All right, I think we can start. Um Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to today's session. We apologize for the delay in the first 10 minutes. We had an unforeseen technical glitch. My name is Lakshmi. I work with the Serene Group in Talent Acquisition, and I am also a member of the Young Advisory Board of NHRD Bangalore chapter. Uh, it's a great evening, I think, to start this webinar on our first book, that is The Secret of Leadership, which is authored by Prakash Iyer. This is going to be a fireside chat with him and Smita Saha. She's here with us as well. At the end of the discussion, at the end of the session, we will take on questions that you might have for Prakash or for Smita, and probably both of them as well. You can type out your questions in the question or chat box that you can see on the right hand side of the GoToWebinar option, and look forward to a great session and an even better interaction with all of you. So over to you, Smita, for today's session.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi. I hope I'm audible. Lakshmi, you can hear me? Neat? Okay,
yes,
great.
Yes.
Thank you everyone for joining us today, and thanks so much, Prakash. Thank you for agreeing to have this little discussion with us.
My pleasure entirely.
Thank you, thank you. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a couple of moments to sort of go over a little bit around the National HRD Network. As you all know, this is really a professional body for HR professionals, and we have a lot of programs running right now. Of course, what we are seeing is this is the kickoff of these little discussions we want to have with authors. The idea being that there is a lot of new exciting thinking happening right here in our city, Bangalore, and we wanted to bring that to you, and so we will be interacting with authors. Similarly, we have many other offerings as well for our members, and hence I just wanted to remind all of you, do get in touch with us and become a member of NHRD. There are various types of memberships available. We have individual memberships, which are lifetime memberships. We also have student memberships, which are available, and these have various benefits linked with them. We also have institutional memberships, both for corporates and also for colleges. And then these also have our long-term ones for about 10 years. So it's a very good linkage and interaction to have. Moving into what we're doing in the month of June. So we have, those of you who've been sort of regular with us, you may have seen that we have been coming together with a lot of different learning forums and knowledge sessions. So May has been very exciting, and we have a few more things also lined up. Later this week, we have our thought leadership meeting. This time it's about creating an inclusive learning journey where we have 5 leaders across different industries and organizations talking to us about how you can create an inclusive learning journey in this new norm. In June, 4th of June, we have a discussion with Gopal Iyer of EY where we are talking about reimagining careers. Moving on, on 11th June, we have a session on creative confidence. On the 18th of June, we have an exclusive program for students, which is about personal brand equity. This is a part of our Confluence program that we run throughout the year, which is particularly targeted to the college students, our MBA students, and probably final year students in engineering. We also have been putting together some really good certification programs. Last month, we had done the design thinking learning program for a couple of hours, and the kind of feedback we have received, we are going ahead with a certification program. When we had planned this, it was more, it was going to have contact classes, but moving forward now, we are going to do all of it virtually. So this is exciting stuff. Do stay in touch with us. We will be doing a few more certifications to come. We have the analytics piece and also an ER and IR certification program coming up soon. Do stay in touch with us on our Twitter handle, Insta, and Facebook, so you know what's happening, and we continually post most of our offerings over there, so it's easy for you to connect and figure out what's happening and pick up what you really enjoy. Again, a quick reminder you could scan this code and actually take on our membership, or you could go into our website and pick it up from there as well. And with that, we move on to our little discussion this evening. So Prakash, thank you so much. Just a little bit about introducing Prakash. Prakash is now a motivational speaker and a best-selling author. He has actually been a managing director and in various senior positions in the corporate world. His last position was with Kimberly-Clark Lever. And very interestingly, he, the bit about his job that he enjoyed probably the most was about motivating people and talking to them and engaging with them with stories. And I think somewhere there, all of this materialized, and this thought about actually becoming an author came about. So Prakash, with that, I would, thank you so much for agreeing to coming and being with us today. I had the good fortune of having a little chat with you earlier as well, and it was really fascinating that that somebody like yourself, who's been for 3 decades in corporate, would want to move into something so completely different. So, what were some of your thoughts, perhaps?
Hey, Smita, thanks so much for having me on this fireside chat, and to all those of you listening in, it's a pleasure talking to you. And you've got a bonus today. You can listen to me without having to see me. So I'm guessing that's something we can all live with. So my apologies for that one. And I'm not sure what the glitch is, but it just doesn't seem to connect. So we live with that. But it's such a pleasure talking to all of you.
We have your photograph here.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave that on.
Okay. Maybe you shouldn't. It's a bit like scaring the kids a little bit, but never mind. So yeah, I guess as a kid growing up, I've always had this thing about telling stories and writing a little bit, and maybe the best part of a lot of the things that I did was really around people. Now that sounds like a bit of a cliche when I'm talking to a group of HR professionals, but the truth is, I was that little kid in school who'd be captain of his class cricket team, not because he was a particularly good cricketer, but because he probably managed to get those other 10 people to come along and bury their differences and try and go out and knock the daylights out of class 9B. But that's really the kind of stuff that gave me my highs. And even at work, I guess I was lucky. I managed to get to work with some really wonderful people, good bosses, good colleagues, good teammates. And maybe I learned a hell of a lot out there, and really this desire to then try and share some of that with everybody else. So to cut long story short, I used to enjoy writing, and I always wanted to write that book. And so the first book happened in 2011. I always wanted to speak. And I remember once I had met this man called Brian Tracy. Some of you might know him as this great, really big name motivational speaker. And I used to be running a business at that time. And Brian said to me that, if you're really interested, don't be stupid. Don't quit your job to speak. He said, speak 200 times. Speak for free, speak at the school, speak at Rotary Club. And if after those 200 times, if you're still interested, and B, if someone really still wants to call you to speak, then maybe you have a chance at doing this. And really, that's how this whole thing happened. And I used to be running Kimberly-Clark, and I asked myself the question, what if I was run over by a bus tomorrow? What is the one thing I wish I had done? And I realized that the answer wasn't, I wish I had, created a little more shareholder value, or I wish I hadn't got one more promotion, or I wish I hadn't got something. I really said, this is what I want to do. This gives me my highs. I wanted to speak. I wanted to write. And that's really what explains the decision to kind of get out of the corporate role and to do the things that I always wanted to do.
That's actually very interesting, because I think a large part of in your book, you do talk about doing what you enjoy.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Try again.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can hear you, Prakash. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me, Lakshmi? Smita here.
Yes, I can hear you, Smita. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay. I think Prakash is he's back.
Can you
Hi,
hear me?
Prakash, can you hear us?
Yes,
Yes, we
Prakash,
can
we
hear
can
you
hear
very
you.
clearly. Yes, yes. Can we continue? Prakash? Lakshmi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, I can.
So I guess we need to help Prakash.
Yes, I'm trying to patch him in again.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, hi Prakash,
Does
I
this
can
work?
hear you. Yes.
Gosh.
Are you on some other
Yeah,
line?
and I can hear you too.
Oh, great. I'm glad we are able to continue. Are you comfortable to speak on this line?
I am. I'm on the phone and I'm hoping you can hear me clearly enough.
Yes, I think we all can. Lakshmi, most of all, she's really. No worries, Lakshmi, this is fine. Technology can happen this way sometimes. Thank you so much to everyone for bearing with us and for your patience. So Prakash, we were talking a little bit about how you found your way from a corporate role to becoming an author. This is especially interesting because a lot of us have these desires, right? Like, I want to do something different from what I'm doing today. And in your book, you talk a little bit around following what is it that you enjoy doing? You talk a lot around that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm guessing that everyone out there. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No. So the whole discussion this evening really is about your book, The Secret of Leadership. Stories to awaken, inspire, and unleash the leader within. So I think that's an interesting tagline for the book, but it's so obvious when you've read it. It's an amazing book with lovely stories and very easy reading, frankly. That's what I've personally taken away, is that it's such an easy reading book. It's almost like parables and fables, that there are these short stories that sort of stay with you, and the lesson is so transparent and obvious. And I really, that was what I took away from the book. So, when you were writing something like this, have you been sort of working on this for a long time? Because so many stories. What came about, to actually write a book on stories?
Smita, in my work and in my life, I've often found that you can try and make a point with someone. It could be your children, it could be colleagues at work, and then the message just doesn't seem to get through. But if you tell them a story, it kind of works. The story seems to magically make the point. Also, I think stories are memorable. So long after you've told them something, the story will remember. So I remember as a sales leader, perhaps talking to my sales team, and we might have come out of something, and I'll probably use an example. And being a big cricket fan, I probably have used a cricketing example or told them something, and I'll find that 6 months later, that story is still being replayed. And I'd say, wow, this is clearly working for me. And in a sense, therefore, these stories have been with me for a long time. And I used to kind of collect them almost as I went along. And I thought it might be a good idea to share these stories, because the way I saw this was there are a lot of young people, very bright, very talented people, come out to work, and somehow they miss a trick. They don't necessarily get it right when it comes to this bit about either working in a team or helping other people or being the kind of person that a team wants to have. And very often they get frustrated because they feel that they were so smart, but they weren't getting the results they deserved. They were so good, but they weren't getting the support that they got from their teams. So really, this book was an attempt to try and pull together some of the lessons I've learned. And the way I saw it was, I'm talking to my, at that time, maybe my 22-year-old daughter. And if I was to tell her what are some of the things that she should probably get right as she goes to work, what are some of the things that they may not teach her in college, but I think would be extremely helpful for her in the real world. So really, those are the kind of lessons I've tried to put in over here. And the intent was not to say that every story here will appeal to everybody, but I'm guessing you will find something in it which will kind of turn a switch on in your head and say, yeah, this works for me. And if that happens, I'd probably say job done.
In fact, that was something that I realized with this book, is that, every chapter is a separate story. So it's like, and it's a little bit like, something you go to when you're thinking about, or you're grappling with a concern or a problem or an issue in your professional life, or sometimes even in your personal life, because leadership is there even in your personal life. It actually is one of those books you can go to and maybe pick a chapter, read it a bit, and it sort of gives you that little insight. And I thought that is really the way this book is best used, rather than reading it in a one sitting, which of course you could, just so you know what's there in the book, but it is a little bit like a go-to book to clear your head, is the feeling I got.
Sure, I
you've
think
got these.
a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go on. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Please continue.
Yeah, I was saying that a lot of people say this, which is that it's the good thing about it is that I don't have to sit down and read the whole thing. The truth is, for a lot of people, to say that I'm going to read a book and it's got 250 pages can sometimes be a very daunting task. And not all of us want to sign up for it. So we'd love to keep this book by our bedside or keep it near the office and say, yeah, I'm reading it. And then 3 years later, I'm still reading it. We don't necessarily finish it. So I think the intent was to try and say, make it really bite-sized stuff. You can take a story, you can just flip and find a story. And hope, suddenly when you read it, you might relate it to some part of your life or something that's happening. And a lot of people who have actually read it will come back and tell me that, hey, I like that particular story because it probably appeals to them in some way. Or they'll tell me that, hey, I've used this with my team. I was talking to my team the other day and I shared that story of yours and it kind of worked. And I think that's really the big one. So for all of us listening in on this call, you'll probably find that there are times you're talking to your team or you're talking to people and you want to get a message across. And what you might find in this book is really a collection of stories which you can kind of plug and play. And these are not stories that belong to anybody. So in the sense that, hey, you can always say that your friend Prakash told you that, and I'm sure it will work. So that's all you need to do.
That's a good one. Yeah, really. One of the you have all of these things, and when you say it appeals to a different sort of people, and I totally agree, because there are things over here which I personally think I would like my son to read, and then there are things that I want to use at work. So the appeal is quite universal, really. When you were putting all of this together, did you have a particular audience in mind? Because in my view, this is something that would appeal to so many different types of people.
Yeah. So I must say, like I said, I probably wrote it I have children who are now like, I thought of it as a conversation with my kids, and the kids were starting off at work, and I said, hey, if I was to tell them, here's what I've learned, and what would I want to share with them. So I think that has 2 or 3 things to it. The first, it's in a language which I think kids will, my kid would have understood. And that is to say that if I try to tell him about the challenges and the psychographics and how there is theory around leadership and management, I don't think they'd be interested. So this is stories which they can relate to. This is simple stuff. I also, Smita, the way I saw this was that when I was at work, I saw lots and lots of bright young people coming out of business school, some of the finest business schools, very bright, very smart. They do very well in the first few years. And then you start seeing that they are not doing as well as you might have liked. So they are not necessarily popular leaders. They aren't really inspiring their teams. They have lots of challenges working with their peers. So they are not, they've got constant support issues. Finance is not helping me. HR is not helping me. Production not helping me. Supply chain didn't help me. So there's this constant thing that the whole world is out to get me and see me. I'm such a good guy. I'm trying my best to make it work. Now, I think this doesn't work. And clearly there are some lessons that can help us all to get it right. And this book really tries to tell you that I think the problem sometimes is that we spend our entire education is built on competing. We need to be better than the other person. If you've got to beat your neighbor Patel uncle's son to get into engineering college. When you get into engineering college, you've got to beat the next guy to get a job in that dream company that you always wanted to work for. So you're constantly competing, but you must realize that in the real world, you've got to learn to collaborate. The competition, you've got to leave it behind. You've got to be the kind of person who can help other people succeed. If you can do enough of that, you will find they are all helping you succeed. And truly, the magic of being a good leader is to turn the spotlight away from yourself and to flip it onto other people and say, hey, how can I help them? It's a mistake when a leader looks at his team and says, wow, I have 20 people reporting to me, so whatever I say, they will do. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. You got to say, wow, I've got 20 people that I've got to help them succeed. And if I can do that, I got it made. And that's really, I think, what I try and talk about in this book. And therefore there are lots and lots of different things that will allow us to do that. But at the heart of it, I think, is this ability to focus on other people. It's also about saying work hard. It's also about never expect other people to do things you would never have done. It's also about doing the right thing. But it's also about being happy at the end of it with all of this. So.
Yes, in fact, there are these wonderful, these 4 sections, and each section has all of these good stories. The sections, do you have any particular, do you have a favorite? A favorite story that you particularly are attached to?
So there is one story, and that's the story that this book begins with. And it's been a story that kind of is very close to my heart. And it's a story that's grown over time. And it's really about leadership lessons from a tea bag.
Yeah.
And I don't know, some of the people listening in might have either seen the video or heard about it, but it's still very, very close to my heart. It's a simple thing. Given that I'm now speaking to you, Smita, I can say this, that it's a line that I heard in the context of women. Okay. And I read a line somewhere that said that a woman is like a tea bag. Put her in hot water and you'll know how strong she really is. And I thought it's such a lovely line, and I have a lot of respect for all the women out there. And I said, this is really what a fabulous line it is. And like a lot of things in my life, I look at something and then I try and say, wow, is there another message here? And that's how, for me, it said, this could be true for leaders. And then I said, if it is true for leaders, what else could it be that leaders are like tea bags? And then I found there could be other lessons other parallels that you could draw between being a leader and what a tea bag might teach you. So at the end of it, I have like 8, 9, 10 lessons that a tea bag can teach you. And I think it's pretty cool. It's also a simple way to say, next time I have a cup of tea, think of one of those lessons. And, it could be a lesson as simple as saying that tea bags might have, terrific looking labels, and some of them have these silk tassels, strings. Yeah. But none of that makes a difference to the tea bag. What matters is the tea inside the bag.
Yeah.
The labels don't matter. And I think that's a great lesson for all of us. Sometimes we get too caught up in, what's my title? Which business school did I go to? What's the initial after that first 3 letters of my business school, etc., etc. Ramesh, don't worry. After the first year or two, no one cares where you're from. What they'll worry about is, how are you as an individual? How are you as a colleague? How are you as a person? And I think that's really what makes people tick. So it's good to focus on saying, how do I get that bit inside me to get better, rather than looking to polish the labels.
Yeah, actually very true, and there are so many powerful stories like that. One of the stories that stayed with me is the elephant and the peg. It's actually such a, it sort of touched me because it is so true. When a baby elephant is born and they're trying to domesticate it, they peg it down with a metal link, and therefore when the elephant tries to escape, obviously it gets hurt, and then that stays in their mind. And later on, even when they become so big and obviously so very powerful that they could pull the peg off the floor, they no longer try it. And I somehow felt that this is something it's a little bit sad, because sometimes we get so used to doing things a certain way that we forget that we probably have so much more potential which we haven't even tapped into. And it sort of stayed with me, and I actually found it a little something that I we must always remind ourselves that what we do is one part, but there is obviously this entire whole amount of capabilities and the potential that we bring that we probably don't even explore. Yeah. Something like you decided.
I'm glad you like the story.
Yes, after you were in the corporate, you became a motivational speaker. So yeah, something like that, isn't it? I mean, there's one thing we do and we think we do it really well, and then we forget that there could be so many other things we could do equally well, perhaps, or even better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And I think it's interesting that many times the barriers or the things that we think is holding us back is actually not as powerful as it is. We worry that, oh, I can't leave this. And, like a baby elephant, we think that damn thing is going to hold on to me and it's going to hurt if I get out of here. But the truth is, it's not so bad. And I like that you mentioned this story, Smita, because I'm guessing there could be some people who say, hey, I've heard this story before. And there are, that's possible. But here's the interesting bit. I think there are a lot of these simple stories that can actually make a point pretty effectively. And what this book does is allows you to actually say, maybe you've got a colleague who needs to hear this story today, or you've got someone you need to tell them tomorrow about this. And this is really where I think it can help all of us to become just a bit better leaders, because it tells us that, hey, there are stories out there which we can use. And I'm hoping that even as you read this book, you will find yourself saying, I must learn to tell more stories. I must tell more stories because I have a lot of stories to tell. And each of us has our own set of experiences and things we've heard and things that, maybe your parents told you or a boss told you sometime. But these are very powerful stories. And I think I'd encourage everyone to go out there and say, use them.
Yeah, very true, very true. And then in the book you sort of go into, initially a lot of it is around discovering your personal leadership style and insights into self-leadership, really. So because I think one of the things we keep talking about is leadership in a role and not necessarily leader of other people. And then you move into things like a leader's way, and where you are then talking about the leadership mindset and how the person leads a team, and a lot of those other pieces also come in, which is, I think, a lot more sophisticated.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it, which is a lot of it is really inside our heads, and before you learn to lead teams, you got to learn to lead yourself too.
Yes, and absolutely right, because I think the bit about who am I and what is it that I stand for, to a large extent colors and is the lens through which we view the world.
True. Very well said. I completely agree with you.
There was this other bit, we hear a lot from people talking about, doing what is expected, and not perhaps what they are genuinely interested in. A lot of young professionals will join a profession and will want to, sort of work a certain way because that's what's expected. And when you talk about being effective and being a leader, I think some of it is also about doing what you want. And there was that, I think, the other story in your book, which talks about trying to lead the way you want to go and not lead the general direction. So did you actually have people who sort of inspired that story about the deer?
I think it happens all the time in our lives. I think we tend to kind of, not think too hard and just do what somebody tells you to do. And I think this is just a simple message to all of us to kind of say, listen to your inner voice every time. Try and understand what is it that you're trying to do. And maybe there's another message in a lot of those stories, which is there's no one right way. And especially when it comes to leadership, it's, very, very often people will have this debate, should I be a micromanager or should I be this, 30,000 feet guy? Should I consider long term or should I consider short term? Should I be hard on my team or should I be a nice person? I don't think there's one answer to any of those questions. A lot of it depends on where you are. A lot of it depends on being able to look at your situation and then try and figure out what might work well. It's also about having more than one skill in your repertoire. So sometimes you can think you're a very hard taskmaster, terrible guy, but equally there are enough people who are these very, very nice, hail fellow, well met, patting everybody on the back, but not the kind of leaders who will then get the best out of their team. The teams are slacking up perhaps and not really doing everything. So I think a good thing leaders learn to do is to say, hey, I must be a bit of this and a bit of that. And I must learn to say which of these will work better now. So be careful. Don't let yourself get stereotyped as a certain kind of person. And I know I'm speaking to HR professionals, but which is really one of my peeves about a lot of the assessments that we do, which is to say, you are a J. You in a sense, you say that, okay, are you an I or a J, or, what's your profile? And then you almost say that's who you are. I'm not a big fan of that, because in a sense, you're telling someone that you cannot change. That's who you are. And anybody who sells you one of those packages will tell you, you can do this again after 10 years, the person wouldn't have changed. But I'm not a great fan of that idea, simply because we want to change, we want to learn, we want to get better.
Yep.
And therefore, you've got to give people a chance and say, hey, I will learn, I'll get better. Everybody wants to get better.
Yes, absolutely. And, one is about getting better, and second is about what, the way you get conditioned to think in a certain way, when you talk about being competitive versus being collaborative, or something I continually think about is the first thing about being a leader is to be generous. And a leader can't be the one who hogs away all the all the good stuff, because then you can't be a leader. You have to be a leader if there are people willing to follow you, right? And I somehow find that there are many, that's a recurrent theme in your book, where you talk continually about the leader has to give.
Yeah. And I've seen some fantastic leaders at work, and if you typically think of, if each of us was to reflect, you'll probably find that the kind of leaders who got the best out of you and the kind of leaders you felt inspired by were really those kind of people. They gave off their time, they gave off their knowledge, they were quick to give credit, they would have your back. I think that's another big one. I find that when the pressure is on, what happens? Does your leader kind of stand up for you? It's easy for him to throw you under the bus and say, oh yeah, we'll work on it and come back. And then try and tell the boss that actually I tried to tell her before this presentation she should not do it, but she didn't listen to me. No, don't do that. I think you've got to be willing to say, I think we still believe this is right, but in the light of what we are hearing now, let's see if we can rework this and come back. I think you want people who will stand up for you. And I think great leaders let their teams know that they've got their back. So I think for those of us listening on this call, it's one thing to say, I am that kind of person. And many of us would like to believe that we are the kind of leaders who will give, who will support, who will have their back, but we don't show it enough. And I think it's important for us to show it so that your teams work knowing that if something was to go wrong, I know what my boss would do. And I think having that confidence, having that trust in your team leader to say that I know how she will behave in a crisis, or how he will behave, I think is a good thing to have.
Yes, in fact, one of the things, and sort of extends from here, is that the leader's empathy. We talk a lot about we must make sure that we understand what's happening in our teams, and we talk a lot about doing surveys and understanding, to build an understanding of what's our audience. But the whole thing about actually going down to the level of the employee to understand how they're experiencing something is completely different. And that's such an amazing leadership thing. And I think you do touch upon that a little bit when you say, that the story where you say that, a leader must go down to the level of the employee to view it from completely a different angle. And that sort of shows you at complete different opportunities.
It's a story that I heard from Viren Raskina when I was doing a chat with him around coaching. And for those of you might remember, Viren Raskina is this bright young kid who played hockey for India. And then at the age of 29, I think he was captain of the Indian hockey team, quits hockey, and then goes and studies at ISB and becomes an MBA now. That's quite a combination for a guy. A terrific chat. But he was telling me the story about how there was a game that India had lost to Australia, and the coach was doing a replay. So he was showing them segments from the previous day's game. And there was this time where Mukesh Kumar, who was one of the forwards in the Indian team and a great guy, Mukesh Kumar hits the ball and it goes straight to the goalkeeper, the Australian goalkeeper. And the coach is furious and he pauses and he says, look at this. There were so many gaps. You could have hit it here, you could have hit it there, and you go and hit it straight at the goalkeeper. So Mukesh Kumar says, 1 minute, coach, वापस दिखाओ, show it again, replay it. And the coach does a replay and he says, देखो इतना gap था. So Mukesh says, coach, ऊपर से ना gap नजर आता है. नीचे आके देखो, gap नहीं दिखता. सिर्फ सारा opportunity ही दिखता था. And I thought it's a great point about how many of us as leaders can think that the world is very different from our perch, from where we are. But we should let our teams know that we are willing to come down to where they are and take a look and see what's going on over here. I think that's a good lesson for all of us.
Yes, absolutely. So, so we could go on like this. So I just wanted to check, Lakshmi, are there any questions that you would like for Prakash to take?
I can't hear you, Lakshmi.
Lakshmi?
I can't hear her.
No, I can't hear her either. Lakshmi can't hear you. Can you unmute, please?
No, I think this is the phone versus the computer, I think. Damn. Apologies to all those of you listening in. I think this is extremely sad that this is how it's gone.
Yeah, we just are seeing, this is tough. Unfortunately, I don't seem to have the question panel here.
So I think let me jump in. There are a couple of questions.
Yes.
Yes,
please.
Just give me a minute. I do.
Nikita.
So just give me a minute. Okay, so this is a question by Dr. Anil, and it's for you, Prakash. He says that you've been a MD CEO of great companies and you have an impressive profile. Given an opportunity to go back on your timeline, what would you have done differently if you had a coach like Prakash Iyer? What would you want to go and do differently back? So this is a question by Dr. Anil to you, Prakash.
Okay. I guess one of the things that I wish I had, if I go back in time as a young kid coming out of college and then getting to work, I wish I had someone who told me that, if you want to be a cricket commentator, go out there and talk to All India Radio and see if you get a chance to become a commentator. Never really pursued that part of my life. I wish I had done that. That's one of the few things that I might have put down as a bit of a regret. I think if I was to look at a coach and from a work standpoint, as a CEO, one of the things I struggled with, Anil, was taking tough calls on my own people. And I guess as a natural leadership style, I tended to become, be the kind of guy who would also become good friends with the team. I'd put a great premium on making sure that everybody in the team knew each other. We bonded as a team. I'd make sure the families kind of got into it and therefore make sure that, we're all in it together. This was all very nice, but this became a bit of a challenge when suddenly I had to fire, a direct report who by then had also become a dear friend, whose son was a big fan, whose wife was a fabulous woman who we all knew. And now to take a call to sack someone like that or to tell someone to let go of someone, I struggled with it. I probably dragged my feet the first time. I fought with the organization to hold on to him, and when all of that failed, we had to let him go. But after the person went, I suddenly discovered it was clearly the right decision. From a business standpoint, it was the right thing to do. And guess what? We're still friends today, and that person's done well for himself. So what is the fuss all about? And I think that was a lesson for me. And I wish I had a coach who could have told me that, don't let emotion come into this. It's a business decision. Just go and do it.
This is actually something very, very critical, because often when we are, whether you're task oriented or relationship oriented is something that we all talk about. And this is something, this balance is perhaps one of the toughest ones. Is there something that you've sort of covered off on this area in your book, Prakash?
There's got to be something left for the next book, right?
Yes, that is true. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Let me just see if I can pull off the Q&As. Unfortunately, I don't have that. Lakshmi, can you read the questions? I don't have access to the questions. I can see the chat, but I can't see the Q&A for some reason. That doesn't fit to me. One moment.
To say something, but you can't
Yes,
hear
I can hear you. I can hear you. Yes, please. Hello?
Okay,
Hello?
perfect. So there's another question.
Yes, please continue, Nikita.
Yeah, so there's another question that organizations encourages to develop more followers than leaders. Is there any particular reason for that? Why should we encourage more followers than leaders?
I would question that. I don't think that's true. Maybe it's in our minds, and maybe it's about how we think of it. But good organizations and certainly good leaders would try and ensure that they're creating more leaders than followers. And some of the best leaders that I have worked with are the kind of people who would almost want to ensure that they see leaders all around them. They put people into leadership positions. They put people into saying, you take a call, you tell me what you think would be the right thing to do, and make people feel that they're in charge, that their word matters. And I think it just increases the sense of accountability. People take ownership, and I think you suddenly start feeling that you're a leader. And I think that's really the way to go. So good leaders, as the cliche goes, create leaders, not followers. And I'd probably say, if anybody out there who's asked this question feels that the organization is actually, in my organization, you're creating followers and not leaders, I think you have a great chance to make a difference. Don't blame it on the organization. Take it upon yourself to say, at least as far as I'm concerned, I will create leaders, not followers.
Nikita?
Where's everybody?
Yes, very much here, very much here.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I think there was a lag.
Nikita?
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a question about personality. Yeah, I think there's a slight lag. So there's a question that how important is storytelling, and how and what are the qualities that made you, Prakash, an inspirational leader?
So I think the first bit, how important is storytelling? It's worked well for me, and increasingly I now start, so it's worked for me. If I look back on my career, maybe 30 years ago, it worked for me. As a young area sales manager trying to get a bunch of salespeople excited, I would tell them stories, and it worked. And I guess I've had a career where I've used it. It's now becoming a little more fashionable, I might say, but I just think it's a great tool. And as leaders, and I would probably say even as HR folks, I think we should use it. We could use it a lot more. It's almost like a secret weapon. And It's not difficult. It's easy to kind of pick up. You just want to get comfortable with it. There are some simple things that you can learn, but you will discover that storytelling can stand you in great stead. So to answer your question, yes, I think it's, I won't say it's important as much as saying it's a powerful tool. The bit about how did I become an inspiration leader, I'd be damned if I thought of myself like that, but I'd like to believe that, yeah, I had great fun working with my teams. Maybe that's probably it. You've got to be excited by the people you work with, and you've got to be excited for them. I think if you can do that, and maybe this goes back a little bit to my childhood, and I did talk about it in the beginning to say that I was this, little kid trying to captain a cricket team without being the best cricketer on the team. And that's a good way to look at your role as a leader. Don't worry about being the smartest girl in the room or the smartest guy in the room. Don't worry about being the person who knows it all. Become this kid who's almost curious to say, wow, and that curiosity, that willingness to say, I don't have to be the smartest person, will allow you to respect the skills that other people have. It will allow you to look at what's the good stuff other people bring to the table. And I think that's a good way to be a leader. And that makes other people say, I like to work alongside, and I won't even say being led by this person. I like to work alongside this person because I think she has my best interest, or he has my best interest at heart. And I think it helps me to become a little bit better. And if you can do that, I think you'll generally find that you get it right. So don't worry about yourself, worry about them, try and help them get better, and try and see how can you get better for the team by drawing on the strengths of what other people have.
Yeah. I know we are on time. We'll probably just take last one or two questions. So this is a question from Gagan, who says that, this quote by Swami Vivekananda, first learn to obey, command will come by itself. First learn to be a servant, then you will be fit to be a master. Does being too humble and modest about yourself, is it seen as a shortcoming in present times to someone who wishes to be a leader? And he's a big fan of yours, Prakash.
So thanks for the question and for that last bit. Again, I don't think it's a bad thing to be humble or to be modest. It's generally a good thing. But like I said earlier, be careful. Don't get so boxed into this humility and modesty piece that you don't assert yourself. There will be a time when you need to assert yourself. There will be a time when you need to get aggressive and make your point. So don't let this, oh no, but I'm a modest person, or oh no, I'm a humble person, I can't be doing that. Don't let that happen to you. In general, you will find that you will draw your strength and your power out of the fact that people see you as a pretty modest and humble kind of person. So you are a likable person. Therefore, they want to work with you. They want to kind of say, okay, let's listen to what this person has to say because I like the person. Remember this, I think eventually people want to work with people they like. They don't want to work with people just because they have to do it. So I think you want to, in general, do business with people who you enjoy working with. So give them a reason to do that, but don't get boxed in. Remember that there will be times when you need to set that humility aside or that modesty aside and assert yourself. Feel comfortable doing that too.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Prakash. I think we'll just take one last question before I hand it back. So this question is, Prakash, and this it's by Suresh, and he says fantastic session, and you're a legend and a great leader, and he has learned a lot of leadership lessons from you. The question he wants to ask is, Prakash, what's your favorite book and a leader that you admire? And there's another question by Gagan, I'll just club it, and it's about not by Gagan, sorry, by Dr. Anil, that in these COVID times, what is your message to HR leaders?
So favorite book, a leader that you admire, and a message to HR leaders in these COVID times.
That's three
Okay,
questions.
so let me try and answer the first one, which is my favorite book. I read a fair bit, and I quite enjoy. I love Malcolm Gladwell, so anything that Gladwell writes, I like a lot. And I read one of the nicer books I've read in the last year is a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a great book on how do you actually build habits. I read Bob Iger's story. Bob Iger is the guy who still runs Walt Disney. It's called The Ride of a Lifetime. And I quite enjoyed reading that book too. So what I would urge people to do is not to worry so much about, just pick up a book, pick up something that interests you. And as someone who's read a lot of books, I must tell you that my wife complains that there are a lot of books that I have which I haven't read. And I think that's a good thing. Never feel compelled to read every book that you buy or every book that you pick up. Because that's what stops many of us from reading a lot of books. You pick up a book, it's a bore, you don't enjoy it, but you get stuck with it, almost like I have to finish it. So don't feel pressured. Pick up a book. If you like it, finish it. If you don't, leave it. Leader that I think there's a leader who was my boss twice over. I worked for him when I was at Unilever, and then I worked for him at PepsiCo. His name is Suman Sinha, PM Sinha. He used to be the chairman of PepsiCo. He's been a bit of a mentor for me, someone who I learned a lot from. And I must say this, that there are many of us who worked for him at PepsiCo, and many of them have gone on to have great careers, both within PepsiCo and outside. But all of us often talk about it, that we should be privileged to be, alumni from the Suman School of Management. And I think he taught us a hell of a lot about what it means to be a good leader. So that is the second one. And the third question was around a message for us at this point in time. I would say to HR, and since that was the question, what should HR do? I would probably say, be kind. This is a good time to show empathy, to remember that there may be people around you who feel very, very differently about what's happening right now than you might. You probably have more visibility, you probably have a job, you probably don't worry about losing it. Whereas the people who might be working with you might have fears, might feel a lot more anxiety. And I think it's a good time. It's a good time to reach out, to be proactive, to have those conversations, to over-communicate, but above all, to be positive, but to then share that positivity, to share that kindness. I think this is a good time to show you care.
Thank you so much, Prakash. I think this was a very interesting evening. Thank you. In spite of all the technical glitches, I think it was nice. It was an interesting conversation. By running these discussions with authors like yourself, our hope is that some of our members would then perhaps pick up some of these books and use them. I totally love the book, The Secret of Leadership, your book, the one that we're talking about today. And at the end of this session, I would hope that some of us would perhaps pick it up and read it. I've done it, and I thought it was fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Smita, for having me on this chat. I'm really I'm feeling sad and bad that the text didn't quite support us. But for those of you who are still on this call, thank you so much for your patience. Really appreciate it. There's no way for me to reach out to those people who might have left, but hopefully we'll catch up another day. I hope you will go out and pick up a book. It could be mine, it could be any other, but read. I think I do believe leaders are readers. Go out and read.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Readers are leaders. Thank you.
Yeah, and just before we wrap up, just want to tell everyone, if you can just go to menti.com, and the code is on your chat window, 189735. If you can just share your feedback on menti.com, it would be great for us. Thank you so much, Prakash. Thanks, Smita. Thanks, Lakshmi. Thanks everyone for joining in.
Thank you, everybody. And do give us your feedback on menti.com. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
Prakash.
Nikita, Lakshmi,
Thank
Smita,
you.
and everybody else.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thanks, Lakshmi. Thanks, Nikita.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Prakash. Bye-bye.
Bye.